All right, guys, it is our fifth day of reading the great Gilly Hopkins, and I'm going to read for 20 minutes today, and then we will pick back up on Monday. All at once, leaving Thompson Park became urgent. Gilly knew in the marrow of her bones that if she stayed much longer, this place would mess her up. Between the craziness in the brown house and the craziness at school, she would become like W.E., soft and no good. And if there was anything her short life had taught her, it was that a person must be tough. Otherwise, they were had, and Galadriel Hopkins was not ready to be had. But she must hurry. It didn't matter whether the people who hovered over her had fat laps or computer brains, for if a person could crack under heat or cold, a combination of the two seemed guaranteed to do, and even the gusty Galadriel. But now she would have preferred to get Mr. Randolph's money on her own, and leave both William Ernest and Agnes Stokes out of it. But in her haste she acted stupidly and used them both. The opportunity fell into her lap unexpectedly. Trotter has never asked her to babysit with William Ernest before. But suddenly, 2 days after the card joke bombed, Trotter announced that she was taking Mr. Randolph to pick up a few things at the dime store and would Gilly watch William Ernest while they were gone. It was too perfect. She should have realized that, but her anxiety to get the money and get going had fuzzied her common sense. With shaking hands, she leafed through the fat suburban phone book until she found the number for the Stokeses in Thompson Park, who supposedly lived on Aspen Avenue. Another of the world's lies. The senior Stokes had long before left the Washington area, abandoning Agnes to a maternal grandmother 75 years old by the name of Gertrude Birkenheimer. But Agnes' delinquent father was still listed in the directory, just as though he had never left her. Agnes arrived immediately, nearly falling over herself with joy that Gilly had not only invited her over, but was actually asking for her help in carrying out a secret and obviously a legal plot. She agreed without objection to being the lookout at Mr. Randolph's house, although Gilly suspected that she would have preferred an inside role. Agnes was to do her whistle when she claimed could be heard a mile away, should the taxi bearing Trotter and Mr. Randolph return while Gilly was still inside. Prying W.E. away from the TV and explaining his part to him proved far more difficult. "I don't understand," he said, for what seemed to be the 30th time. Blinking stupidly behind his glasses, Gilly started all over again from the beginning as patiently as she could. "Mr. Randolph wants you and me to do him a favor. He's got something on the top shelf in his living room that he needs, and he can't see to get it down. I told him you and me weren't too busy this afternoon, so he says, 'Miss Gilly, could you and William Ernest, who is just like a grandson to me, do me a tremendous favor while I am busy at the store?' So, of course, I told him we'd be glad to help out. You being just like a grandson to him and all." She paused. "What kind of favor?" "Just get this stuff down off the shelf for him." "Oh, then, what stuff?" "William Ernest, I haven't got all day. Do you want to help or not?" He guessed so. Well, it would have to do. They had already delayed far too long. She gave Agnes some last-minute instructions out of range of the boy's earshot. Agnes should have to be paid in cold cash to keep her big mouth you-know-what. Then she went and got W.E. by the hand, and using the key that Trotter kept, they let themselves into Mr. Randolph's house. The house was dark and damp-feeling, even in the daytime, but fortunately the boy was used to it and walked right in. Gilly pointed out the top shelf of the bookcase. "He told me he had the stuff right behind that big red book." W.E. looked up. "See which one I'm talking about?" He nodded, then shook his head. "I can't reach it." "Of course not. I can't reach it either. That's why we both have to do it." "Oh. Now look, I'm going to push this big blue chair over and stand on the arm. Then I want you to climb up the back of the chair and get on my shoulders." He drew back. "I want to wait for Trotter." We can't do that, William Ernest, honey. You know how hard it is on Trotter climbing up and down. It wouldn't be good for her. He was still hesitant. Besides, I think it's kind of a surprise for Trotter. Mr. Randolph doesn't want her to know about it yet. The boy came close to the chair and tiptoed up towards her. I'm scared, he whispered. Sure you are, but just think, man, how proud everybody's going to be later. After the surprise can be told and everything. When they find out who it was that... He was already climbing up on the chair. It was an old, solid, overstuffed one, so that when he stood on the arm and then on the back, it never moved. Gilly got up on the chair's fat arm and helped him onto her shoulders and held his legs. This little man was heavier than he looked. Okay, first pull out that big red book I showed you. He grabbed her hair with his left hand and stretched towards the shelf without straightening and pulled out the book. It fell onto the floor with a crash. I dropped it. Don't worry about it. Just look back there, behind where it was. He leaned forward. Ouch! She was afraid he'd take her hair out like weeds from a wet garden. It's dark. Look, man. No, stick your hand up in there. She had to shift her balance as he leaned forward to keep from crashing to the floor herself. Pow, he said softly, bringing back a dusty fist, and it was a rubber-banded roll of bills. Gilly reached up. Don't let go of my legs! He dropped the money and grabbed her hair with both hands. Is there any more? Whee! Agnes's signal. Gilly nearly fell off the chair as she snatched W.E. off her shoulders and scrambled back to the top of the chair back, tilted sarsaparilla to sorcery back in place, jumped down, stuffed the roll of bills into her jeans, shoved the heavy chair forward, grabbed a startled William, and dragged him out the back door. I gotta give it to Mr. Randolph later, when Trotter isn't around, she explained to the blinking allies. Look, I gotta go to the bathroom. You go help Trotter get Mr. Randolph in the house. Oh, and tell Agnes to go home. I'll see her tomorrow. But Agnes was waiting for her in Trotter's hallway, lounging against the stairs. Fine. What was you looking for? No luck. Agnes looked down at Gilly's jean. Then what's that bulging in your pocket? Okay, I found some, but I didn't find much. How much did you find? Agnes, I don't know. I'll help you count. I swear, Agnes, I'll help you rearrange your nose if you don't get out of here. I promised I'd give you something for helping, and I will, but I can't now, and if you don't understand that, you're in worse shape than I thought. Agnes stuck out her bottom lip. If it wasn't for me, you'd be caught right now. I know, Agnes, and I won't forget that. But if you hang around now, we'll both be caught. So get out and keep your mouth shut. Without waiting for farther sulks, Gilly pushed past Agnes and ran up the staircase. She shut her door and pulled the chest of drawers in front of it. Then she took out the special drawer and began to take the money to the bottom with a sinking heart. $34. 34 measly dollars. 44, counting the 10 she had already. It had seemed like more in William's fist and bulging in her jeans. She counted it again to make sure. No, there was no more. 5 $5 bills and 9 ones. It had seemed like more because of all the singles. She laid out a 1 to give to Agnes, then reluctantly swapped it for a 5. Agnes would not be bought off cheaply, she knew. If only she had done it by herself. It cost too much to use people. Why had she thought she couldn't do it alone? She had been in too big of a hurry. She should have taken more time, planned more carefully. Now she had gotten both Agnes and W.E. involved, and all for a measly $39. Then, remembering the weight of W.E. on her neck and shoulders and the pain as he yanked her hair in terror, she started to count out another $1, but that would leave her only 38. It would take a lot more to get even as far as the Mississippi River. She returned W.E.'s dollar to the stack. She would have to search again, but she would go back by herself the next time, as soon as she figured out a plan. Dust. The thought hit her after supper when they were all sitting in the living room watching the evening news. Suddenly she saw it, lying like a gray frost upon the TV set. Dust! She would go on a campaign, dusting first this house and then the other. She jumped to her feet. Trotter! Slowly Trotter shifted her attention from Walter Cronkite to Gilly. Yeah, honey. Mind if I dust in here? Dust? Trotter spoke the word as though it were the name of an exotic and slightly dangerous game. I guess not. Her gaze slid back towards the screen. Why ain't you wait till we're through watching TV, though? Gilly jiggled her foot through a Central American earthquake in the bribery trial of a congressman from who cared where. She couldn't stand waiting. She ran into the kitchen. She now knew how she could get the money on her own, and every minute seemed to matter. Under the sink were some old rags, and could you believe it? A quarter bottle of furniture polish. She poured some on one of the rags, which she had carefully dampened just as Miss Nevins always did, and proceeded to clean the never-used dining room with its dark, heavy table and 6 chairs. One side of the rag was black in 2 swipes, but Gilly turned it over and poured out more polish. The steady wiping and polishing with the clean, dry cloth fell into a rhythm that began to calm her inner frenzy. By the time she got to the picture over the buffet, she not only cleaned out the niches of the car frame, but she hunted up Windex and paper towels to wash the faces and so forth of the baby angels who were tripping around on clouds, with only a ribbon or a stray wing to cover their private parts, as Miss Nevins used to call them. Meantime, in the living room, the volume of Trotter's voice told Gilly that Walter Cronkite had called it a day, but she no longer needed to rush. Gently she wiped off the last streak of Windex. By supper the next night she had finished cleaning everything but the living room chandelier, and how could one do that without a stepladder? Oh, forget it, Gilly, honey. This place looks beautiful. No one's going to notice the chandelier, said Trotter. I will, said Gilly. I gotta have a tall stool or a stepladder or something. Then I could do the top kitchen cabinets, too. Mercy, next thing I know, you'll be whopping right down with all the rest of the trash. William Ernest looked up from his meatloaf in alarm. Mr. Randolph was chuckling. There is no danger of that, Miss Trotter. Well, you know what the good book says, dust to dust. No, squeaked William Ernest. You ain't dusty. Oh, bless you, sweetheart. I was only talking crazy. Nobody will take away William Ernest as Miss Trotter. Now, will they, Miss Gilly? Mr. Randolph reached out and felt for the boy's head and patted it. Of course not, said Gilly sharply. I just want something to stand on to finish my job. My, said Mr. Randolph. You really have yourself. Finishing her daily Bible reading for the good book, still open, was pushed to one side. Right before her was a piece of notepaper. Oh, I skipped a page. I was like, that doesn't make sense. My, said Mr. Randolph. You really have yourself a prize helper here, Miss Trotter. Young people nowadays hardly. If you want, Mr. Randolph, she would have to be careful. Talk slowly, as though the idea were just occurring to her. I could maybe do your house when I finish here. Of course, I'd have to have a stepladder, probably. Didn't I say she was a prize, Miss Trotter? Said Mr. Randolph was beaming. I might even have a ladder in my basement. Gilly jumped up from the table, then caught herself. Slow down. Slow down. Her heart was pumping crazily. She made herself sit down. Maybe after supper I could take a look. I'd sure like to finish the chandelier tonight. Trotter and Mr. Randolph nodded and chuckled happily. People were so dumb sometimes. You almost felt bad to take advantage of them, but not too bad. Not when it was your only way to get where you had to go. The stepladder was old and rickety, but it would beat trying to climb those bookshelves of Mr. Randolph's, which looked as though they might come right over on top of you if you pulled at them. She set the ladder up under Trotter's chandelier, and as she painstakingly wiped each piece of glass with her ammonia water rag, she would have to grab the ladder from time to time. Dizzy as she was with the smell of the ammonia and the thought that by tomorrow night, at this time, she'd be on her way to California. Late that night, she packed the brown bag and shoved it far under her bed. Tomorrow from the school payphone, she'd call the bus station and find out how much the ticket cost. Then all she had to do was get the rest of the money. Gilly was coming out of the phone booth the next day when Agnes appeared, demanding her money. She pretended to be grumpy about the $5 Gilly gave her, but there was a greedy gleam in her eyes. She was pleased, all right. Can we get more? She asked. Gilly shook her head. That's all there was. I split it 3 ways. Looked like a lot in your pocket yesterday. Yeah, but the rest was all in ones. I don't see why you split equally with that weird kid. He wouldn't know the difference. He's not as dumb as he looks. Gilly looked Agnes straight in the eyes. He acts dumb, maybe, but if he thought you and me were cheating on him... Agnes shrugged. Well, she said, next time let's not use them. Okay, sure, next time, Gilly agreed, knowing happily that there would be no next time with creepy Agnes, the stoke. Tonight she would be bound for her new life, her real life. She got rid of Agnes at the front gate with some lie about Trotter forcing her to scrub all the dirty pots in the house. Agnes said she'd go on home. She wasn't too crazy about cleaning pots and pans. The stepladder was in the hall. Gilly put her school books down on the table and went right to it. As she was leaning to pick it up, Gilly, honey, want some snack? She straightened up quickly. It would be better to eat while she had the chance. She gave the ladder a pat and went into the kitchen. Trotter was sitting at the table. She seemed to have finished her daily Bible reading, for the good book, still open, was pushed to one side. Right before her was a piece of notebook paper, half filled with her square, laborious script. She had a 19-cent ballpoint clutched tightly in her right hand. When Gilly came in, the huge woman smiled shyly at her over the top of her reading glasses. Writing one of my old children. I do miss 'em when they grow up and leave me, but the good Lord knows I ain't much at writing. She looked down at her letter and sighed. There's more of them cookies in the tin box next to the refrigerator. Gilly poured herself a 12-ounce glass of milk and took 4 of the cookies. Sit down, Gilly, honey. I ain't really busy. Gilly sat down at the far side of the table. Things is going better for you now, ain't they, honey? Okay. I've been meaning to say to you how much I appreciate the way you've been making friends with William Ernest. Yeah, okay. Like Miss Ellie says, you're a special kind of person, Gilly. It makes me praise the Lord to see you so busy helping steed of hurting. Shut up, Trotter. You got so much to give. Mercy, what most of us wouldn't give for half your brains. Shut up, Trotter, shut up. The silent commands were obeyed because just then William Ernest, honey, appeared, and Trotter roused her great hulk from the table to get him his snack. Trotter, baby, if you had half my brains, you'd know to let that boy do things for himself. If I were going to stay here, I'd teach him how. You want to so hard, and you don't know how. Even the birds know to shove the babies out of the nest. If I were going to be here, I'd make a man of your little marshmallow. But I can't stay. I might go soft and stupid, too, like I did at Dixon's. I let her fool me with all that rocking and love talk. I called her Mama and crawled up on her lap when I had to cry. My God, she said, I was her own little baby. But when they moved to Florida, I was put out like the rest of the trash they left behind. I can't go soft. Not as long as I'm nobody's real kid. Not while I'm just something to play musical chairs with. An elbow pierced her rib cage. Gilly jerked wide awake. W.E. was trying to attract her attention without getting Trotter's, mouthing some words through a full load of cookie crumbs. Huh? She asked the question by raising her eyebrows. He swallowed then. Surprise, he mouthed, pointing his head to Trotter's general direction. She shook her head with exaggerated vigor. Not yet, she mouthed again. Later. A little grin escaped and danced around his face. Gilly sighed. If she didn't watch herself, she'd start liking the little jerk. She excused herself. I'm going to get on to my dusting over at Mr. Randolph's. W.E. made it as if to follow. Now, William Ernest, you better watch Sesame Street today. I'm going to help you with your reading later on, and you have to be real sharp, right, Trotter? You better believe it. She knocked several times at Mr. Randolph's door before he opened it, his tie and shirt awry and his face still clogged with sleep. I brought your stepladder back, Mr. Randolph. Oh, thank you. Just put it down out there on the porch. But I thought since I was here and had the ladder and all, I might come on in and start to work. Oh, Miss Gilly, you don't have to worry. I was just talking the other night. Where I can't see it isn't likely to hurt me. I don't mind. I want to help. Every week or so, my son over in Virginia comes and brings a lady to vacuum a little. It's really all I need. But I want to. What I mean is, I want to help Miss Trotter, and you know how she is. She really doesn't need my help, but I figured if I do something for you, it'll be like doing something for her. Bless you, you sweet little lady. How can I say no to that? It worked. He stepped aside for her to come in and shuffled along right behind her into the living room. Was he going to stay in there, his sightless eyes following the sound of her? Why don't you just go up and finish your nap, Mr. Randolph? I feel bad waking you up for this. He chuckled and stretched out in the warm blue plush armchair. His feet up on the equally worn stool, he closed his eyes. Wouldn't you rest better up on your bed or something? I'm going to be working in here, making a lot of noise. Mercy, Miss Gilly, I can rest in heaven. In the meantime, it is human company that I treasure. It won't bother you if I just sit here, will it? I promise not to make suggestions. Why don't I come back later? I don't want to bother you. Bother me? I'm delighted. She kept her eyes on the little man as she carefully stepped up the stepladder at the far end of the bookcase wall. The blue plush chair was exactly where she'd shoved it 2 days earlier, cater-cornered 3 feet from the place she'd have to set up the ladder in order to reach sarsaparilla to sorcery. Excuse me, Mr. Randolph. Her voice barely squeaked out. She cleared her throat. Mr. Randolph! Now she was yelling. I'm going to have to move your chair. He got up like an obedient child. Gilly shoved and pushed and tugged the heavy chair to a place opposite the red encyclopedia. She arranged the chair and then the stool, and then took Mr. Randolph's elbow and led him to them. Now your chair is just opposite from where it was before. I hope you haven't strained yourself, Miss Gilly. Right between the end of the couch and the corner of the desk, couple feet on either side, okay? Fine, fine. He sat down and stretched out again. Gilly went back to the stepladder, climbing the first step and then back down. I guess I'll begin with the windows over the desk. He smiled his funny little blank-eyed smile. You're the doctor, Miss Gilly. She did the windows and the desk, then moved the ladder around, Mr. Randolph to the smaller of the 2 giant bookcases. She went back and dusted the picture over the couch, which was of a fancy-dressed white people in another century having an elaborate picnic in the woods. All right, guys, that is all for today. Like I said before, we will finish. Well, we won't finish, but we will read again on Monday. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.